Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we've got a fascinating academic study, a master's thesis actually, that digs into a huge historical puzzle.
A really big one.
Yeah, is there a real traceable link between the Kyrgyz people of Central Asia and, well, modern-day Turkey, thousands of miles away in Anatolia?
It sounds almost like folklore, but what our sources argue is that this connection is incredibly deep. And the fascinating part is how epic myths and specific place names act as hard evidence where the written history is.
Wow.
It's pretty thin.
Exactly. So that's our mission for this deep dive. We're going to follow that trail. We'll look at the geography, the names left behind.
The historical how.
Right, how the migration actually happened. And then the most exciting part, we're diving into the shared cultural blueprint found in their epic poetry. We're talking about the Kyrgyz Manas, the Oghuz Turkic Dede Korkut.
And the older Oghuz name. And we're going to spend a good chunk of time on maybe the most surprising figure they share, the one-eyed giant, their version of the Cyclops.
Okay, let's unpack this. We're basically looking for the fingerprints of migrations that are otherwise totally invisible.
Yeah, exactly. And the first layer of evidence is it's right there on the map.
Pure geography.
The sources show how traditional Kyrgyz naming customs, naming places after clans, leaders, or land features like Aksu, which means whitewater, were carried directly into Anatolia. And these aren't just like one or two random spots.
No, this is a pattern.
A definite pattern. For instance, down near Izmir, which is a major city, you find Kyrgyz Iskal, an old Ottoman port area.
Wow, okay. So the Kyrgyz pier, that's not subtle.
Not at all. And the names can get tangled up in local folklore, too. Near Eskişehir, there's Kyrgyz Mountain, or Kyrgyz Tusu. But locals sometimes call it Kyrgyz Mountain.
Which means 40 maidens.
Exactly. And that 40 maidens or 40 heroes thing is a huge motif in Central Asian Turkic folklore. It points to this blending of ethnic memory and local myth.
It's like the name itself is assimilating.
In a way, yeah. Then you've got the Kyrgyzler Turbasi, the tomb of the Kyrgyz heroes, near Bursa. It's believed to be from the 14th century, and again, it's associated with a hero, and you guessed it, 40 maidens.
These are physical markers you can go and see.
Absolutely. And sometimes the link is even more direct. There are villages called Manas Village Manaskoy in Bayburt and Tokat provinces.
Named directly after the epic hero. So these are like cultural flags planted in the ground.
That's a perfect way to put it. But maybe the most compelling place is a town called Kibershik, right between Istanbul and Ankara.
Okay.
The local people there have this incredibly strong oral tradition that they are descended directly from the Kyrgyz people, who they call the Kara Tartar.
The Black Tatars. We'll get to them.
Yeah. And they even say the town's name used to be Kyrgyzik, and it just sort of evolved over time.
That's a powerful local memory. But, I mean, how do we know it's not just a romantic story they tell?
Well, the source connects it to this amazing anecdote of defiance. Apparently, at some point, officials tried to get them to relocate, and their legendary response was, Jirbidzi gitmis.
Which means?
It's something like, cut us down, but we will not leave. I mean, that's not just a story. That's a fierce, distinct identity speaking, an identity that knew it was different and was determined to stay put.
That sense of being different is the perfect bridge to the history. So how did these pockets of Central Asians actually end up in Anatolia?
This is the historical mechanism. All these places we just mentioned, they fall right inside the settlement zone of the Kara Tatar, the Black Tatars.
So who exactly were the Black Tatars? It wasn't just one group, right?
Far from it. It was a huge polyethnic group, a mix of Mongol peoples and various Turkic groups, Aidurs, Kipchaks, and of course the Kyrgyz. They were all pushed west during the Mongol conquests in the 13th and 14th century.
So it's a bit messy, and the historian Faruk Sumer points out that people in Anatolia at the time didn't really distinguish between Mongols and Turks.
Not at all. Anyone coming from the east was just a Tatar. It was a catch-all term. So the Kyrgyz, moving with all these other groups, just got filed under that Kara Tatar umbrella.
And they settled in central Anatolia during the Ilkhanate period.
Right. The Ilkhanate was a Mongol successor state, and it basically governed this whole region. They used these groups for military service.
So these groups were kind of stuck there.
They were. And when the Ilkhanate finally collapsed, the Kara Tatars just stayed, and they slowly started assimilating into the local Oghuz Turkish population.
But their distinct identity lasted for a while. And you pointed to a key military event that proves it, the Battle of Ankara in 1402. This is huge.
It's an incredible moment. You have the Ottoman Sultan Bayezid on one side and the great conqueror Timur, or Tamerlane on the other.
And the Kara Tatars were fighting for the Ottomans.
They were, but in the middle of this massive battle, they defected, switched sides en masse to Timur.
Why?
Because they saw Timur as one of them, as ethnically closer to their Central Asian roots than the more settled Ottomans.
So their tribal identity was stronger than their loyalty to the Sultan who was paying them.
Much stronger. It cost them, though. Timur later had many of them forcibly relocated, some even back toward Central Asia, but many remained, and those are the ones who fully assimilated over the next century.
Okay, so if you connect all the dots,
Yeah.
these place names, like Kiprachik, they aren't random. They're the cultural footprints left by this very specific, very resilient wave of people before they blended in completely.
Exactly. The geography and the history line up. But to really understand the depth of the connection, you have to look at their stories. The shared heroes, the shared fears.
And this is where it gets really fascinating. The idea that a single terrifying figure, the one-eyed giant, links these cultures.
It's an incredible piece of mythological DNA. Let's start with the Kyrgyz version from the Manas epic. The creature is called Makeldo,
The mighty giant.
the mighty giant. He's so powerful that the enemy Khans have to summon him during the Great Campaign, the main war in the epic. And the description of him is just unforgettable.
He rides a rhinoceros.
The rhinoceros.
Okay, that one detail tells you this myth is ancient. I mean, rhinos haven't been in the Kyrgyz heartland for a very, very long time.
It screams antiquity. It's just the story came from somewhere else or from a much earlier time. And his witness, of course, is his single eye. The heroes Amenbet and Chubak shoot out his eye before, the final act.
Beheading him.
Beheading him. Now let's jump thousands of miles to Anatolia and the Oghuz epic, Dede Korkut. Their giant is Tepegöz.
Which literally means eye on top.
Right. And his origin is even more fantastical. He's the child of a human shepherd and a Paria fairy.
So he's got this supernatural lineage.
And it gives him immense power. He has a magic ring that makes him invincible. And he's just this force of absolute terror. The text says he grew up eating the ears and noses of children.
Ugh, that is a specific, grotesque detail.
Yeah.
It makes him more than just a monster. He's a violation of, human order.
He absolutely is. And the hero Basat has to figure out how to defeat this invincible being.
And the weakness is?
The eye, or the neck area. The one spot his magic ring doesn't protect. And the story ends the same way, with a beheading.
So the DNA is identical. A supernatural monster, some kind of unique defense, a rhino or a magic ring, and a single fatal weakness in the eye. It's the same story.
It is the same story, and the question is why? Why does this specific, complex myth exist in both traditions?
It can't be a coincidence.
No way. And the answer seems to be that the story was already ancient and widespread before the migration. A historian from the 14th century, Ad-Davidari, he wrote that the older Oghuz name epic was revered by Turk, Mongol, and Kipchak peoples.
So by all the groups that made up the Tatars.
Exactly. And he specifically mentions the Tepegöz story as part of that shared tradition. So the story of the one-eyed giant was already common cultural property. The Kara Tatars simply carried it with them to Anatolia.
The Cyclops is the smoking gun, mythologically speaking.
Yeah.
But there are other echoes, right? Other shared motifs that really cement this connection.
Oh, absolutely. Once you start looking, you see them everywhere. Take the figure of the wise elder, the bard.
The spiritual guide of the story.
In Dede Korkut, it's Dede Korkut himself. He's the one who names the heroes, which is a sacred act. He gives advice to the Khans. He delivers these sacred blessings called Yam.
And in Amanus,
You have figures like Olya Ata or the elder hero Bakai, who serve that same role, the keeper of wisdom and memory.
and you mentioned a linguistic link here that is just mind-blowing.
It's incredible. The modern Kyrgyz word for a saga or tale is jamak.
Yomak.
That word comes directly from the ancient ritual term yam for a blessing or prophecy.
Wait a second. So the word for story is derived from the word for sacred blessing.
Precisely. The very act of telling the story is seen as a continuation of a spiritual ritual. It links the modern storyteller, the Jamakchu, directly back to the ancient shamanic role of the Ozan, like Dede Korkut. The story isn't just a story, it's a living piece of spiritual heritage.
That is fantastic. Okay, what about the women? These epics are not known for damsels in distress.
Not at all. That's another defining trait. Both traditions have these incredibly strong martial heroines. In Manas, you have Kanuki, who is Manas's brilliant advisor.
And in Dede Korkut.
You have Banu Chichek, who is so skilled she actually fights her future husband, Bamzi Barak. almost to a standstill.
Yeah.
And the same thing happens in Manas. The hero has to fight the warrior maiden Kis. It shows a culture where female strength was really valued.
And finally, even the instruments they use to tell these tales are related.
The physical tools, yeah. The Kyrgyz komuz and the Oghuz kopuz, they're basically cousins. The old Oghuz kopuz was fretless, just like the komuz is today. It only grew frets and evolved into the modern baglama much later in the 17th century.
So the instruments, the heroes, the bards, the monsters, they all traveled together.
The entire cultural package. It transforms this from a vague historical idea into a certainty rooted in culture.
So to wrap this all up for you, the listener, we started with these strange Kyrgyz and Manas place names you can still find on a map of Turkey.
From Izmir to Bursa.
We then tracked the actual historical migration through the Black Tatars of the 13th and 14th centuries, this wave of people that moved west and eventually assimilated.
And we sealed the deal, culturally, through these shared epic stories. Most clearly, that identical myth of the one-eyed giant Makoldo and Tepegos.
It really proves that even after centuries of blending into the local population, these nomadic traditions were strong enough to leave behind evidence, both on the land and in their stories, that you can still find today.
And it shows that for a nomadic people, oral literature, the stories told by a Jumukchu, can be a more reliable historical record than any written scroll.
It makes you think. If a story about a rhinoceros-riding single-eyed giant could survive for millennia and cross a continent, what other powerful ancient stories are hidden just below the surface of our own languages and place names? You should really look into the living tradition of these storytellers, the Jmokshu and the Ozan, and ask yourself how a sacred blessing, a yam, manages to survive for centuries just by being told as a tale.